Lamborghini. I don't know. When I was a kid, I just liked the word Lamborghini. I forget. There's a reason why I named him Lamborghini. But when I was a child, well, I was building cars and all that other stuff, or designing cars, or having cars built, and I needed a brand name. So I somehow came across or invented the word Lamborghini. And I forget it meant something, but I don't remember what it was. Basically, I didn't. I don't think I didn't do Ferrari. That was somebody else. Um, I mean, technically, I guess like as people were having Ferraris made or something like that. But basically, Lamborghini was pretty much my company. Basically, it's basically the offshoot of pretty much Lotus or basically what is the Renault manufacturing company, and basically had Lamborghini manufacturing made. I think what I think I did is I actually converted a old. There's this old steam factory that used to build steam engines or trains or something like that, and I had them converted over to basically car manufacturing or something like that at some point in time. So I was making Lamborghinis. I think actually in my Birmingham manufacturing plant actually is where they were actually coming from. They were also doing my DeLoreans and other things like that. Like I say, they're not really DeLoreans. They're like the first Lotuses or whatever, my first cars, whatever, Renault manufacturing and stuff. And it gets all confusing and is all complicated with companies and brand names and all that other stuff. And it's like I had Lamborghinis being made, and Lamborghinis were being made all over the world actually at one point in time, like they pointed out. But pretty much it's where a lot of my car manufacturing came from is Lamborghini and other things. So anyway, yeah, it gets all complicated, but yeah, Brian or Lucifer Star, I did a lot of manufacturing of stuff or inventing of stuff, and then had my people building them, and they were very good at creating and building cars, fast cars too. Like I said, well, actually, the whole thing behind the DeLorean, I didn't like the mid trans or the offset transmission basically. Because anytime you have an offset transmission, you always have a problem. One wheel always spinning more than the other one, and it just never works right. So for the Lamborghini, I wanted a true sports car, and I knew that there would be problems because we had done motorcycles and other things in the past, way in the past, and one shaft, one small shaft, one large shaft, it never works right. It's not so noticeable on motorcycles, but on a car it is noticeable. So anyway, because you have the power outputs a lot higher. So anyway, and probably the first middle slip differentials actually had to do with my motorcycles more than anything else, where they had a big long shaft and then a drive shaft going back to the back shaft. Or saying it's very cheap, very effective motorcycle. Anyway, stuff like that, crazy stuff. But anyway, but yeah, that's where a lot of my manufacturing comes from is that kind of stuff. And basically later on, you know, Lamborghinis and stuff like that, very very high end sports cars. I always liked the rear engine of the car a lot better, and Renault was doing it for me, or the Renault manufacturing plant. So anyway, front car engines and all that. I mean, I don't know, it works better, but the problem always is basically getting the weight to where the power driving wheels are, and so that always created an issue for high performance turns and all that. But then again, the rear engine or mid engine is always a problem. Actually, the weight actually works a lot better at going at speeds if it's in the front. But it's like takeoff versus actual cornering ability, because whenever it's mid-engine or rear engine, it's always pushing. The butt pushes around, and you have to account for that with bigger tires or something like that. But with the DeLoreans and stuff like that, it worked out really good. So, and then later on, we were creating like basically putting aircraft engines inside of mid-engine cars, and Renault had to make a really awesome differential and all that sort of stuff out of really awesome gears, steel basically. A lot of my stuff was Damascus steel, or which isn't really a steel per se. It's actually a titanium alloy, but mixed in and stuff, metallurgies and stuff, and titanium. It's the same stuff basically, only a little bit different process. I forget, but anyway. But basically, it's basically high-end metal smelting pretty much to come up with that stuff. So anyway, yeah. like the first tank transmissions that use turbine engines, the power output ratio to get it down to a slow turning speed for the tracks, you had to have one heck of transmission, which is where 90% of the money goes into when you're building like an Abrams tank or something like that. Is the transmission. If you can get it down or sped down from 5,000 to 5,000 revolutions down to like a slow turning track, then it works great. But yeah, that transmission weighed more than the engine actually. So anyway, lots of fun stuff. And then there's also the fuel mileage problem. But yeah, there's issues with that, issues with this. I mean, I personally like the diesel engines better, but the diesel engines didn't work quite as well as the jet engines as far as power and all that. So, and a lot of people laughed at me and thought that that wasn't even possible to actually. I mean, how much torque could they possibly have? Well, it turns out quite a bit, you know. But they're turning really fast and tracks are turning really slow, and they actually do put out quite a bit of power. But there is people doubting Thomases, as they say, didn't believe that it would actually produce that much power, but it did. So anyway, and then getting it geared down and all that, and the psycho crazy gears to like get it down going that slow, because you're going from like 5,000 to 10,000 RPMs down to like basically like, I don't know, 8 RPMs or something like that. Then there's also the RPM. What is an RPM? Well, it's revolutions per minute or whatever. So anyway, actually, I think some jets are actually working at 55,000 RPMs or something like that. But anyway, the faster you can turn it, the more power they have. So anyway, yeah. So lots of issues, technical issues and all that. I mean, to me, it's fun. I love it. But and actually, diesel engines actually didn't have as much power, anywhere near as much power as jet engines do, for some strange reason. But I always loved my jet engines. I always thought that they would eventually turn out to be a really good investment as well as a really good engine type. If you could deal with a high temperature exhaust coming out of them, which is also a problem. And for a tank, that's a real huge issue. The fact that you have 5,000 degree or whatever, couple thousand degree temperature coming out of the back end of it, and it's like, well, you're lighting up the night sky. It's like, where's the tank? Oh yeah, there it is. Whereas a diesel engine can kind of basically be less of a signature to infrared. So yeah, jet engines don't really work out that great on the battlefield when you have a bunch of IR and what's called infrared sensors and all that, and that's really the more of the bigger issue. And I guess it's, well, you're just gonna light up the night sky with the heat signature, you know. But then again, over large areas, I don't think it's that noticeable. I don't know, at distance. So anyway, and there's just a little noise, loud noise. So anyway, like the Abrams is basically my tank, pretty much. It was a cute idea that I invested $1 million in, which is basically the price of the transmission. They're very expensive. Anyway, though, but they were able to move tanks faster and better, and I wanted tanks to fly, and they did very well. I also had diesel tanks and all kinds of other stuff, combat tanks, and just engineering stuff. I didn't think that anyone was going to go crazy with them, but they did. So whatever. So anyway, I also had the Sherman manufactured and all that, which actually, like I say, started out with a cast iron tank. So anyway, 2 inline 4-cylinder flathead engines, basically, first. Anyway, LS, Lucifer Star, and all that kind of manufacturing. And, well, So anyway, the Abrams was more or less, well, it was kind of me, but not necessarily completely me. Some other people were handling it or building it, whatever. So anyway, though, but diesel engines are actually a lot more effective, actually. And Russia liked the diesel engine a lot better because fuel is easier to get. Alcohol, you can burn alcohol with jet engines, whereas whatever. Basically, jet engines will burn almost anything. So even whale oil. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, most of my engines were actually multi-fuel. So anyway, but I invented Lamborghini as a brand name and all that other stuff. El Lamborghini. Anyway, yeah, I think they spelled it wrong. I don't know. Anyway, whatever. I thought it was cute to say when I was a child. Lamborghini. Anyway, yeah, and then later on, designing tanks and stuff like that. So, inventor of jet engines and aircraft and all that. And I was the one who came up with the design for a jet engine. So, and they work really well. So anyway, yeah. L.S. Lucifer Star, Brian Briley, Alexander. Yeah, I was very good at everything. Namer of America, leader of Germany for quite a while.